Welcome to Steve's Vintage Model Builds. This is Steve. I've got a short little video today. But first, a bit of good news. You may have heard me mention in a previous video that I lost a crucial part for the Tamiya 1/48 scale Spitfire. I found it. And so everything's back on track with the Spitfire, and I'm also going to do, I'll be giving updates on that step by step, and I'm also going to do a full build of the Tester's Hawk Douglas Dauntless SBD, or SDB, SBD, yes, SBD, silent but deadly. Okay, so today just a short little video. This arrived in the mail the day before my birthday, and so I'm going to take a look at it. It came from Rare Waves USA, or sorry, Rare Waves in the UK. It got here the day before they said they were gonna, it was gonna at the earliest arrive. So everything's right there, and thanks to the Royal Mail. We've got the outer packaging here. It was double wrapped in heavy gray plastic, shipping plastic, and everything looked great. And inside, this is what we got. So, I'm going to open up the cardboard sleeve here. Nicely taped all around, no complaints. And good sturdy cardboard packaging there. Alright, so this is just a small thing. It's 1/76 scale, a little smaller than 1/72. And I'm going to use this for a diorama. I'm going to make a diorama out of this. I got this, it cost 20 bucks. That included the shipping, $21 including shipping. And so I thought it was a good deal. Boy, I've been looking around at 1/72 kits. Some of them are ridiculous. They want like $35, $40 for a little 1/72 kit. My wife picked up that the Trumpeter 1/72 Chinook, which is a big kit, 140 plus pieces, and that was only $30. But you got these little planes and stuff. Anyways, I guess because they're so small, it's expensive. So anyways, I've ordered a few. I found some good bargains out there, and got a few other things coming, so there'll be lots of kit reviews. And for the smaller kits, I'll do full builds, including painting. So good news about the Spitfire. It's my birthday tomorrow. Korean barbecue, yay, yummy. And so let's get down to it here. Alright, so take a look at the box here. Nice box art. And it's listed as the Vintage Classics. This was one of the ones from back in the 60s and the 70s. And it's, I haven't built many Airfix kits. And they used to be good, and then the quality fell off, so I've heard. But now they've relaunched the brand in the last year or two, and from everything I hear, they're vastly improved. So, and unlike some other companies who will sell you a really old kit and kind of dress it up with a new box and stuff, but it's still a really old kit, not a very good kit. Airfix actually indicates here it's one of their vintage classics. And there's quite a few 1/76s out there. Matchbox used to make them, and Revell took over a lot of those molds, as I for, especially for the dioramas. So, but this one doesn't come with a diorama. I'm going to build a diorama, and these are perfect for dioramas because they're small, and you can do your diorama on something like this and put a lot in there, right? So, I mean, something the size of this, you don't want to do your diorama on this, but me, I picked up, actually just today, a package of 6 boards, little sheets. They're about this size and about that thickness. And so you can apply your modeling clay, or put glue on it and decorate it. Put whatever scenery, grass, shrubs, bushes, all sorts of things. So I'm kind of excited about this. Okay, so we've got the World War I mail tank Mark I. The first tanks in World War I of this model, or this version, there were 2 types. There were male and female. The male had 6-pounder guns on either side, as well as machine guns. The female just had machine guns. The first tanks weren't really very bulletproof, but they did provide some protection, and of course they revolutionized warfare. They got off to a slow start, but they revolutionized warfare. There's some interesting history as to how the first tanks came about. They were first developed by the British. I think maybe the French did one way back when, but it was more like an armored car. I think the British were the first to really put tracks on them, Caterpillar tracks. And initially, the funding was provided by the Admiralty. The Navy put forward the research and development money initially. I think it was £7,000, something like that, or maybe 70,000. I'll have to check that. I think it was 70,000 pounds to develop and build these quote-unquote tanks. The concept was that they would be quote-unquote land ships, and indeed the first tanks were designated as HMLS, His Majesty's Land Ships. And the idea being that, it would be an armored platform that could cross over the morass of the battlefields and cross the trenches and so on and so forth. So the Army didn't really take up the idea. They weren't backward thinking, they were just having difficulty understanding how it would actually be used in combat. And in fairness, I mean, once they did come on the scene, the Army did use them attempted to use them in innovative ways, with mixed success. As with any new technology, things didn't always work out. So it ended up the funding came from the Admiralty, and the First Lord of the Admiralty, who approved the funding, and yes, it was £70,000, which was a huge amount back then, was a fellow named Winston Churchill. Very famous name. He'd been involved in British politics for quite a long time. He fought in the Boer War in South Africa at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. And he had mixed success with various different things. Unfortunately, one of his biggest disasters was the invasion of Gallipoli, where they tried to take the Dardanelles from the Turks, and it ended up as a total disaster. The Australian-New Zealand troops took it particularly hard with that disaster, and it really was a total disaster. It was an absolute failure thousands were lost and captured. So, but in any case, he was forward thinking in this regard. And of course, there was a great deal of secrecy around it because it was obviously a revolutionary idea. And so, rather than call them land ships or give them some other more appropriately descriptive name, someone came up with the idea of just calling them tanks. So that when they were transported, when they were moved back and forth by rail, they were covered, and the story went out that they were water tanks, and so they managed to keep it secret. And so eventually they developed this model. This is the Mark One. The French took up the idea like crazy, and they actually ended up building far more tanks than anybody else. And they loved the tanks. Charles de Gaulle, who was a tank officer during the First World War and leading up to the Second World War, later became president of France, and he was a tanker. And he was a big proponent of the tank. And so it was developed, to cross the muddy, horrible ground that was full of trenches and barbed wire and so on and so forth. And made its debut in the Battle of the Somme, which began July 1st, 1916. One of the bloodiest battles in human history, it turned out to be. And they were used on an attack of a village called Fleur-Courcelette. The village was taken. Initially, there were 49 tanks deployed, and about half of them broke down or got bogged down, and a few made it in. Actually took the village, but then it couldn't be held, and they ended up, going back. So, but that was the first real use. Then, of course, more famously, they were used at the Battle of Cambrai in 1917, where the tanks attacked en masse. And so, when they worked, they proved to be very effective. Interesting note about the Battle of Cambrai: they were deployed to Julian Byng's Third Army, and Julian Byng eventually became Governor General of Canada. And Canadians will know and be familiar with a trophy that his wife donated, a hockey trophy, the Lady Byng Trophy. And in the NHL, ever since she first donated it, and now in the NHL, it's awarded to the player who's adjudged to have exhibited the best type of sportsmanship and gentlemanly conduct combined with a high standard of playing ability. In other words, a good player who played clean. And it's still presented to this day. So, a little bit of interesting history there. When they were first deployed, the Germans were absolutely terrified. I mean, can you imagine seeing this thing coming up over and just crossing through all your barbed wire, going over your trenches? And, they weren't entirely bulletproof, but they did provide a lot of protection and movable gunpowder. Alright, so that's enough for the history. Let's take a look at the box here. We've got the 176, just says model kit, vintage classics, Airfix. And we've got a side view here, and camouflage view. The first tanks were camouflage painted, but then they found that basically they all got covered with mud anyways from the battlefield. So after that, they were basically, they were painting any camouflage. They didn't bother with green. It was mostly brown, gray, and I mean they were so big anyways. With firing their 6-pounder guns, they'd be hard to not see. So yeah, so that's that. And then here we've got a warning. Not suitable for children under 36 months. No. Contains small parts which can present a choking hazard. Please retain these details and the address for future reference. Remove all packaging before giving the toy to a child. And it isn't really a toy, but in any case. So Airfix is now owned by Hornby Hobbies. They also own Humbrol, and they do model trains as well. On the back here, it does show, if you do want to camouflage paint it, what paints to use. And where is it on the side here? There you go. You get one Airfix. They call them flying hours. So you can join the Airfix club, and particularly if you're ordering directly from them, then you get bonus points that you can use to redeem for other products. The note here on the side, and this is another great thing, Airfix is, they're really great about this. They're not hiding anything. It says here, mold tools made in 1967. The package illustration was by Roy Cross in 1967. And it says here, on the 15th September 1916 at Floorcore Select, a new weapon appeared on the battlefield of the Western Front, the tank. The male version carried 2 6-pounder naval guns and 4 Hotchkiss machine guns. Then it gives you the size of the model itself, and indicates that there are 49 pieces. And you can see here, this was the first one, HMLS Dragonfly. Okay, so let's see what we got inside here. Now, for $20 including postage, I'm not expecting a lot here. I mean, I expect a nice little kit, but it is what it is. So we've got instructions. We'll set that aside. Everything is in one sealed bag. So let's see what we've got in here. That. Alright, we've got rubber band tracks. I think these are the burn-on kind, where you put them together, there's little pins, and then you melt the pins with a hot knife. But yeah, I mean, they're tank treads, all on their own little mold sprue. I'm not seeing any flash, but again, this is the rubber part. Some people don't like this kind, whatever. I was looking at a 172 Trumpeter tank kit, and you've heard me say before that Trumpeter can be guilty of over engineering a little bit. They actually had, you know, when I looked at it, it was like a ridiculous number of pieces, and for a 172 kit. And then I found out, well, they had you, they had just sections that all had to be glued together. So I put that kit back. I wasn't interested in that. My goodness, that's a bit too much. All right, so let's see what we've got here. All right, so here's the sides of the tank. These are they're called sponsons. The sponsons. And the guns come out of there. Various different side pieces and so on and so forth. Not a complicated kit, no big deal. Put that aside there. It's molded in green, as you can see, green plastic. Here's the other side. And the bottom, the front plate, the rear plate. You can just see at the back here, because of the initial design and they were designed to go through rough, up and down, over trenches, across shell holes, through shell holes, down into shell holes, back up from shell holes. They had these little wheels, at the back, and so that kept it, if it was going up, if it went up too high, kept it from falling over back on itself, which actually did happen sometimes anyways, but that's a whole different story. Okay, so we've got the two sprues, and we'll go through the instructions. I saw a review of the kit. I looked at it. I always try and find a review or a build of the kit, even a little one like this, before I order. You never know what you're getting yourself into, even with a tiny kit. But this looks really straightforward. That'll be an afternoon build and paint, another afternoon. So the couple of reviews I did see, there was one decal. One. And that decal said HMLS Dragonfly, and it went here. I don't see a decal here, and there isn't one in the instructions. There isn't. I don't see one tucked away in here. I'm not going to get too upset about that, because in reality it would have got all covered with mud. If you know anything about World War I on the Western Front, the battlefields were an absolute morass, from shell explosions, rain, mud. In Flanders in particular, it was farmland, previously farmland, and back then they didn't really have artificial fertilizers, so the ground was basically soaked in cow and sheep and other types of manure to be used as fertilizer, and so it just became a horrific soup. There were so many examples of soldiers who, when they were advancing, they fell down into a shell hole, and it was just too muddy. They couldn't climb out, and they ended up drowning. So it was absolutely horrific. All wars are horrific, but this war was completely different from anything anyone, certainly in Europe, had ever seen. So that's why they were so desperate to come up with a weapon like this, so that they could, break the deadlock of the interminable trenches. Okay, so we get the instruction sheet, Airfix Vintage Classics, 176 World War I mail tank Mark 1. Multiple languages. In addition to on the box, they include a note here. The Mark I was the first tracked armored fighting vehicle to go into production and was a direct development of the experimental tank Mother, which was built and tested in the winter of 1915-1916. The type first saw action at the Battle of Fleur-Courcelette on 15 September 1916, but the action was not a great success, as great a success as had been hoped, due to the difficult terrain and the crew's inexperience. As with any new technology, of course there were real challenges, but you got to start somewhere. The armament was fitted in side sponsons to maintain a low center of gravity, so instead of a turret on top, they put them on the sides. The mail tank mounted 2 6-pounder naval guns and 4 Hotchkiss machine guns, with the female having 4 Vickers and 1 Hotchkiss machine guns. I'm having trouble saying that, Hotchkiss. Total production was 150 tanks, and this model is based on the example on display in the Tank Museum at Bovington in Dorset, UK. There's a note here for best results, as I always recommend. Surfaces to be painted should be clean. Before parts are removed from the sprue, wash in warm soapy water, rinse and dry thoroughly, and what does that say? Oh, stir paints thoroughly before use, which yes, you should always do. Stir, shake. You can't mix them enough. You really gotta do it. Otherwise, it looks terrible, especially if you're brush painting. And also there's a little note, please note, some parts in the kit may not be required to build the model specified. I think that's just a general note because I think all these parts are going to be used. Okay, and then there's assembly instructions, again in multiple languages. What have we got? 2, 4, 6, 12 languages. So obviously they're a British manufacturer. Europe is one of their biggest markets. So we've got Polish, French, German, Swedish, Finnish, Italian, all sorts of different ones. The English note here says study drawings and practice assembly before cementing parts together. When they say practice assembly, they mean dry fit or test fit, and that way you know how things go together, and so there's no big surprises when you go to actually put it together. It says carefully scrape paint from cementing surfaces, so that's if you like pre-paint or put an enamel base coat on it. Anything that's going to be glued together, you're going to have to scrape that off so that you've got bare plastic to bare plastic. All parts are numbered, and it says paint small parts before assembly. These are very general instructions, not necessarily specific to this. I mean, they're, you know, painting this, you know, it'll be easy. You just spray some Tamiya enamel primer on there, and you're good to go. The other thing I should note here, since we've got the sprues out, the detail is very nice. I mean, you know, you've got all the rivets, And the weld seams on the sponsons, you can see the little rivets. I don't know if you can see it here, but yeah, there's tiny little rivets there. So I'll show how to do this when I actually do the build. But when you're if you're using a primer out of a can, you have to be really careful not to put too much on, because then you lose the details. If you're using an airbrush, it's a little different situation because it's really easy just to put a little tiny coat on there. But it's all, you know, with the spray can, it's really easy to put too much on. And once it's on there, it's difficult to get off without making a mess. You end up having to sand it or use a bright boy and okay, and so then yeah, paint small parts before assembly. To apply decals, cut sheets as required, dip in warm water for a few seconds, slide off backing into position as shown. Yeah, most decals they're all the same, with the exception of the new Edward ones. My understanding is they are insane. You, I don't know. You, I don't know. The adhesive's on the top or something. It's just crazy. You have to watch Peter Oxley's rant on Edward, and he'll tell you all about their decals. Edward kits, especially the older ones, are great. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago they had a fire at their main factory, and prior to that they had outsourced their decals to a company who did them like everybody else, as it's described here. But for some reason, probably accountants, they decided to bring the decal making in-house, and it was one of those things that was, you know, they thought it was a good idea, but it wasn't a good idea. And a lot of Edward customers are pretty upset about how it's all been dealt with. So I haven't built an Edward kit, and I don't really have any intention to because they are more expensive. Anyways, we're getting off topic here. So yeah, standard applying decals doesn't apply here because they didn't include the decal. It says used in conjunction with box artwork. Well, again, doesn't really apply here. And again, the warning, not appropriate for children under 36 months of age due to the presence of small detachable parts. Yeah, lots of choking hazards there. Okay, so that's why if you have young children and you have a hobby room or a hobby area, you make sure that they can access to stuff that's sitting on your table and so on and so forth. Then we've got assembly icons. This is the assembly phase. Indicates to cement. Indicates don't cement. Oh, okay. This is an assembly phase. This means cement. This means don't cement. This means symmetrical assembly. This means alternative parts provided. Repeat. Apply decals. This indicates what they call a crystal part, which would be a clear plastic. This doesn't have it. This means apply weight. This means join by applying heat, like I mentioned about the tracks. Drill, cut, and then it gives you the Humbrol, shows you what Humbrol paint number it is. So, moving right along, as they say, page 2. As you can see, it's not a complicated kit. You start by assembling the guns and the sponsons, and it indicates here you don't cement these here, so the guns can go back and forth, up and down. And again, there's the completion of the sponson, inserting the guns. This shows back to front. Excuse me. 2 pieces here. Same thing again. Da 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 da. Each side has 2 pieces. So you just go through. And then we've got, attaching the sides to the body and the roof. And I guess these are some accessories. I'm not sure what those are. And then the wheels at the back. And how to put it all together. And that, as they say, is all she wrote. So I'm a little disappointed I didn't get the decal. But yeah, what the heck. I'm going to paint it over anyways and make it look, I'll probably put some little scratches in there so it kind of looks like that, but I'll paint it sort of half over. Okay, so outer packaging and shipping, no complaints there. That's a 2. They did a great job at Rare Waves. I'll definitely order from that seller again if I have the opportunity. And small kit, so everything came in one bag, no complaints about that. We've got a little bending here, but everything's still attached, but the parts aren't bent. There's just a little bending on the sprue. Straighten that out. There's very little flash. I mean, you can see flash here. You see that flash right there? Yeah. But there's no flash on the parts. I can't see anything here. So that's pretty impressive for a kit this age. Actually, I do see. There's one little bit there. I don't know if you can even see that. Yeah, you should be able to. So, I mean, that's just the same as nothing. Okay, so good stuff there. So outer packaging, shipping packaging, outer box. It's a regular box. Didn't get squished at all. Everything's fine. No damage to the parts. No scuffing of. There wasn't even any scuffing of the plastic. Parts themselves, nice detail. Everything's there. Nothing's bent or broken. And just a 1/4 point off for no decal. It's only 1 decal, but hey, since it's only 1 decal, why can't you do that? Anyway. Alright, and so then, so for the parts, that's 2.75. I'm not going to knock anything off for that one little bit of flash. And as far as the instructions are concerned, I'm going to take off a 1/4 point because actually, no, I'm not going to take a 1/4 point off. The instructions are really simple. It's a simple kit, and so you get the painting guide on the back in color, So yeah, so that's a 3. So 3 and 3, and no, 3 and 2.75, that's 5.75 plus 4, 9.75 for this little kit. Now, here we've got $20 Canadian for an iconic thing that I hate to use that word so much. I gotta stop doing that. A great example of the technology of the day, and great detail on the parts and everything. So yeah, 9.75. Excuse me. If you think I'm being too generous, leave a comment, and also there'll be the after build review, and I'll also do a video on building the diorama, which is the reason I bought this. It's perfect for a small diorama, and so I look forward to doing that soon. When I get when I get tired of all the intricacy of the Spitfire, I'll just set it aside, and like I'm doing with the Hawk, the Testor's Hawk kit, just do something easy. Just to move your fingers around and look at this, look at that, do this, do that. All right, so thanks again for joining me. A bit longer video than I expected, but there was quite a bit of history, and I did want to show, it's great detail on this little kit. So I'm impressed, and so we'll be back. We'll be back with the build. Thanks so much to all my subscribers and to everyone who views my videos. As I always say, I know everyone's time is valuable, and I can't thank you enough for spending some of your time watching my videos. I hope you enjoy the history that I put on, because that's my thing, and it really provides a lot of context. It also helps to fire up the imagination. A little bit of background. How things were, how things were done, and so on and so forth. So, all right. So thanks again to everyone, and look forward to seeing you next time. Be nice to each other, and love the people you love. Let them know. Have a great day. Thanks again.